Men, on the road to Oklahoma. Gonna go look at some used parts to buy. Me and the wife here. I got her face blurred out because she's in the witness protection program and can't be seen in public, so that's why you can't see her. Anyway, we'll take a look at it and we'll probably buy it. See us. Well, just got back from Oklahoma and we did buy a stash of stuff. Not a lot of stuff, but I don't know, 3 or 4 cratefuls, I guess. Got an entire transmission, complete, everything looks usable in there. A complete compensator, got a complete Bendix drive with the starter. Got a whole bunch of other shit. Not quite sure what all is in there exactly, but piles of stuff. Anyway, it'll be fun to dig through. It'll all be for sale on eBay. The manuals are, there's several different manuals in there. The Honda one's just on top. There's other books there. They're a little bit bratty, but they're all complete. None of the pages are missing. You know, not quite sure what's lurking in the bottom of this, or what's lurking in the bottom of that, or what's lurking in the bottom of any of this stuff. But we'll get all sorted out. It'll all be on eBay. If you happen to spot anything you're interested in, let me know. Maybe sell it to you in advance of eBay sales.
Leave me digress for a moment or two. You know, unless your purpose in life is to burn gasoline and make noise, it don't get much more meaningless than this. Not to cast aspersions, but there's nothing this poor bastard's doing that won't be undone by the next gust of wind. Indeed, he will come and go, leaving no trace of this existence, not even footprints on the hard concrete. But of course he got paid. Who's the fool, you may ask?
Men, last week's video on cam timing and breather timing elicited a lot of comments, interesting comments. What I thought I would do right now is, and a couple of guys had asked, is, you know, how do you rough check this thing? And I think I said in the last video, there's a kind of a down and dirty check I do. Anyway, this is the down and dirty. Start rotating your engine, and the easiest way to do this, of course, is with a, well, if you have the heads off, you could do it like this, if you have the heads and the barrels off. If you don't, put a wrench on the end of the crankshaft and see what happens. But what I like to do is this. Rotate the engine around. Intake valve is opening, okay? Wait for the intake valve to close. Okay, the intake valve is closed. As you continue to rotate the engine, the connecting rod is going to come up. As you would expect, because the cylinder is now on compression. Okay, we're at or near top dead center. The spark plug is going to fire and we're on power stroke. Piston goes down, neither valve moves. Okay, now we're right at bottom dead center just about, and you'll see the exhaust valve is starting to open, and that makes sense because you are now on the exhaust stroke. We get all the way to top on the exhaust stroke, and you can see the exhaust valve is just starting to close. So now we're coming down on intake stroke. Intake valve is open. Intake valve is closing just as we're starting on the way up. And now we're on compression, and over it goes. If any of these events are not happening in this approximate sequence, something is wrong and you need to take it apart and check it out. We'll do a quick look at the rear one. It's going to be the same. Okay, so here's the rear one. I'll do the same thing. We're going to wait for the intake valve to close. It's closed. The rod, flywheels and that are near the bottom. As you continue to rotate, we're up on compression, fire, on the way down on the power stroke. The exhaust valve just started to move because we're on the exhaust stroke. On the exhaust stroke, and the exhaust stroke just now completed, and the exhaust valve is closing. The intake valve is opening on the way down. So we're sucking all of our gas and air in. We're down near the bottom. Intake valve is closing. And we're up on compression and over it goes. So this engine is timed very much correctly. I'm not saying this is dead nuts accurate, but on the ones I have put together that either weren't timed correctly or had a cam that was mismarked, you'll notice, like on this one, the intake valve is just starting to open because we're on the downstroke. Well, if you get one where the intake valve isn't opening until you're way down here, then you got a problem and you got to deal with it. But anyway, that's quick and dirty. How to check whether your valve timing is approximately correct. Any extra 2 or 3 minutes of doing this could save you hours of aggravation. I do this on every engine I put together just in case I did something wrong. Hopefully this will help me catch the mistake. One of the other subjects that came out of last week's video was mismarked cams. This cam I do believe is a good cam, and it is not mismarked. And I'm going to make some of my own marks on here, and I'll explain why in a second. The first thing I'm going to do is draw a line on the tooth that's right between the 3 and the P. Actually, there's not a tooth between the 3 and the P. There's a valley. So I've marked the valley between the 3 and the P. Notice that there's a mark one tooth over right here, and that the other mark is right here. With these marks on here, I now have a way to correlate the position of the marks to the top center of the lobe. So this mark, this timing mark is 1, 2 teeth over. The other timing mark is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 teeth over. Now look at this cam. The guy's going to look at this one and say, what the fuck? This was a cam that was mismarked, and I remarked it. Of course, at the time I was doing it, I knew which mark was which. But, this has been sitting around in my pile of old cams for, I don't know how many years. And now you don't know for sure which one to use. So how do you figure out where the correct timing marks might be? Well, you compare them to this cam. So we'll do the same thing. We're going to mark a tooth and correlate it to the place between the center of the 3 and the P. And the center between the 3 and the P isn't a tooth, it's a valley. So we'll transfer that to the other side of the cam. And what did I say? The good mark was 2 teeth over, 1, 2. This is the good mark. and the other mark was 13 teeth over. So let's see where we end up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So these are the marks a guy could use, this mark and this mark. Anyway, that's how you could, once you figure out the timing is incorrect because a gear is mismarked, this is one of the ways you can figure out how it's supposed to be marked and correct it. Probably not the only way, maybe not the best way, but it works for me. And now I'd like to share a letter that was sent to me a couple weeks ago, I think, from a viewer and supporter, a man named Bob. I'm just going to call him Bob. I'm sure he doesn't want his personal information floating around out there. But anyway, this letter was accompanied with a very generous gift that the channel will put to good use. Anyway, Bob says, Gary, Mr. Ironhead, I've never been called that before. Happy New Year. From the videos, you look healthy. I hope the family is well and good. Yeah, we're doing okay. We had a brush with COVID a little bit ago, but we're doing fine. And the family consists of the wife and the two cats. Two cats are doing well too. He goes on to say, I'm impressed with your persistence and stick-to-it attitude with something that a large part of the motorcycle world would just say, why? You know, these machines run with cause and effect and the laws of physics, and everything has to have an explanation. I just don't buy unexplained things going on with the piece of machinery. There's got to be a cause and effect. Bob goes on to say, I'm personally glad that you have pretty much helped solve a problem that a lot of Harley owners would like to have addressed many years ago. Well, I don't think the problem is quite solved, but I'm going to keep working on it. I also enjoy the different fixtures you have made to help some of your machining operations. A lot of people, not necessarily the mechanics, just let parts flop around or not line up properly. It is all interesting and useful. And you know, I hope people do find it interesting and useful. Although most of this stuff is Ironhead specific, you know, the principles involved can be expanded to just about any piece of machinery. So I hope people do pick up a little bit outside the Harley world with this thing. For all of the informative videos, the V-Twin rants, and just life at Ironhead Cycle, I say thank you to you and your family for allowing you the time to entertain and inform. And that's the goal. I hope I'm halfway entertaining. I hope I'm halfway informative. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. P.S. Buy batteries for your video or take the family to dinner. I think I will. Thank you. Appreciate it. You are most welcome. Yeah, this video is kind of turned into a week in the life of. But anyway, in that pile of stuff from Oklahoma, I found a bag with these things in it. So I do believe, of course, these are Sportster oil pump parts, and this is a spring that came out of this one. This is one of my springs, and I don't remember whether this is one of the used ones I had or one of the new old stock ones. But you can see the genuine Harley one is much shorter than the spring that I believe came out of this pump. I don't have the whole pump, and it was taken apart when I got it, so I don't know for sure that this spring came out of there. But since it was in with these parts, I assume it must have. So the question gets to be, you know, how the hell long are these springs supposed to be? And I thought that a longer spring would benefit the operation of the check valve. But anyway, in the maintenance manual, it gives a spec on the spring, 1 in 15/64, which is just about 1 1/4, and that's almost exactly what there is. I did some poking around on the internet, and there were 2 springs listed in the Harley book, and the consensus is there's one that was 71 and later, I think, and it's supposed to be about a 1/4 inch longer than this one. Well, this is quite a bit longer than a 1/4 inch longer than this. So I don't know where the spring came from or if it's supposed to be in there. So I looked at this, I thought, aha, let's try this spring there and see if it fixes the oil pressure problem. And I might do some testing on it. I still don't know that I'm going to run it in an engine, because I started poking around on the internet and I found a guy who allegedly seized his engine, took everything apart, and he found that he had a longer spring than a stock one in his pump, and he thinks that prevented this ball from opening and seized his engine up. Well, let me show you what else I found in that pile of shit from Oklahoma. I found this, a connecting rod. The connecting rod has been chowdered. So was this connecting rod removed from the same engine with the oil pump that had the long spring in it? And is the long spring the reason that this rod is chowdered? I don't know. It makes me scared to put the longer spring back in the engine. Now, I did some poking around on the internet, and there's a website, I'll put a link below here. I think it's called K-Model Sportsters, or K-Model and Sportster website. Anyway, the link will be down below. Those guys got a lot of good information. And according to the info on their website, this ball is unseated at about 1.5 psi. That ain't very much. Of course, it ain't much of a spring. I have a hard time believing, regardless of how sloppy the clearances are in your pressure gears, that a positive displacement, unregulated, and this is not a regulating ball and check here, ball and spring, this is just a check valve, that a positive displacement, unregulated pump, gear pump, isn't going to produce at least a couple of pounds of pressure to unseat the ball. Remember, the ball is before anything goes through the rotating parts. So, the clearance on the pinion, the clearance of the rollers in the ball and the rocker arms and all that has got nothing to do with this ball unseating. It's just the pressure generated by the 2 gears, with nothing between the gears and this ball. Anyway, point being, that's not a hell of a lot. I have a hard time believing that a slightly longer spring is going to keep this ball from opening. When I do the next round of tests on these pumps, I'm going to try this out and conduct a couple of experiments with it. But nonetheless, worth noting, one of my customers was trying to hook an oil pressure light up to his pump, and I told him he had to be careful because I've tested and have found that the new repo switches don't open until sometimes 8 psi. They should open at no more than 3 or 4. And the guys on the K-Model Sportster website concur with me that the most you want a switch to open at is 4. Ideally, if you could find one that opened at 1.5 or 2, you'd be better off. But that's like picking pepper out of fly shit. That's pretty tight tolerance on this thing. But anyway, for what it's worth, we'll try this out later on and see if it makes any difference. Would I put it in an engine and run it? I might, after I verify that it'll open. So we're going to do that on the next round of tests. I got another motor on the way in. This motor I'm working on now is on the way out. And I think with all of that, I am out of here. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Join me on Patreon. Get yourself a coffee cup. Get yourself a new sticker. That's all I got for now. Hoping to see you next week. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.